rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events, this is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. Oh my gosh, I forgot to grab a couple of things, so pardon me while I finish setting up. I can't see, not able to see X X or, not able to see X or, let's see, what's going on? Am I not able to see Facebook? Give me just a second here. There it is. Okay, so there's Facebook, and now let's grab X. Oh, goodness. Okay. Go back here. All right, hello. Hi, everyone. Okay, so we're back. Yes, I am grabbing things, I know. I'm slacking, I get it. Let's be, it was good for a good thing. I went out and I was doing a bunch of yard work, and so, yeah. Anyway, all right. Let's go ahead and get things kicked off. Tonight we have for the Pledge of Allegiance, Coco, Cam, and Sean. And for those of you that don't know, Sean is a autistic individual, normally nonverbal, but he is definitely verbalizing in this clip, at least in the beginning. So don't worry, it's not a big deal. He's just doing what he does because he gets excited for the Pledge of Allegiance. There's a story behind that, and I've told it before, but that's okay. Anyway, so let's go ahead and stand, remove our hats, put our hands over our hearts, and follow Coco, Cam, and Sean in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And of course, we thank Coco, Cam, and Sean for that wonderful rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to hear your rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance played on the program, all you have to do is record your rendition and take that audio file, ship it off to me. You can send it directly to fans, F-A-N-S, at americanperspective.online. That's fans at americanperspective.online, and I will get it into the rotation for you. So yes, thank you. I do appreciate that. And I appreciate, of course, all of my submissions and Whiskey Warriors who have submitted pledges so far. All right, let's go ahead and do our promo for tonight. It is the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, IOTC.AmericanPerspective.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is IOTC.AmericanPerspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's IOTC.AmericanPerspective.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution, you can head off to constitution.americanperspective.online. Take a look at this. It's an 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are tear and water resistant. Check out that binding. Not cheap glue here, folks. It is stitched all the way through the leather on the outside and wraps those pages up, protects them. It has a 100-year manufacturer's warranty against materials and defects in workmanship. If something goes wrong with this thing in that 100 years, you can send it back to the manufacturer and they will either fix it or replace it for free. My rumblers, of course, know it has sexy rounded corners, keeps from poking you in the rear end or in the chest if you're putting it up in your chest pocket. Also, too, it is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved. And my youngest whiskey warrior has confirmed that the information contained within will get you your civics badge in Scouts. Go to constitution.americanperspective.online and get yours today. Also, I encourage you to check out the rest of the Institute on the Constitution's offering because of the fact they are doing great work over there with grassroots education. And you should really check out a lot of their stuff. It's good things, good stuff. All right, tonight, I had to dig in the well a little bit. The well, or the wool. Tonight I'm drinking Wolcott Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Now I know Bonnie, if she's in the Rumble chat, is going to complain about the fact that she doesn't consider that to be bourbon, but whatever. Anyway, it's what I got. Here you go. And of course I'm drinking it out of the We the People Lucky Shot USA glass here. So with the stones, of course, always with the stones. And no, I'm not talking about the Rolling Stones. I'm talking about the whiskey stones that are in the bottom of the glass. Oh, and Buddy Weiser also points out and says that the Constitution won't fall apart like some others you find online. That is true. Very true. All right. Let's go ahead and move into the first segment of the show, which is, of course, On This Day in American History. And, of course, for On This Day in American History, we read from the American Patriots Almanac, written by, William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb, chock full of all kinds of factoids and information daily about our wonderful country that we call home. Tonight, for August 31st, hey, we're about ready to flip to a new month. Tonight, for August 31st, it covers the Code of Conduct for American Soldiers. Now, what I'm about to read to you, I actually used to know verbatim, because it was part of the requirements for me in the Army to understand, but you'll get a taste of what it is that we are doing here. So, in August of 1955, President Eisenhower authorized the Code of Conduct for the members of the U.S. Armed Forces. The code is an ethical guide that instructs armed forces members when they are prisoners of war or are in danger of capture. It is a good reminder of the solemn duty shouldered by American soldiers. 1. I am an American fighting in the forces which guard my country and our way of life. I am prepared to give my life in their defense. 2. I will never surrender of my own free will. If in command, I will never surrender the members of my command while they still have the means to resist. 3. If I am captured, I will continue to resist by all means available. I will make every effort to escape and aid others to escape. I will accept neither parole nor special favors from the enemy. 4. If I become a prisoner of war, I will keep faith with my fellow prisoners. I will give no information or take part in any action which might be harmful to my comrades. If I am senior, I will take command. If not, I will obey the lawful orders of those appointed over me and will back them up in every way. 5. When questioned, should I become a prisoner of war, I am required to give name, rank, service number, and date of birth. I will evade answering further questions to the utmost of my ability. I will make no oral or written statements disloyal to my country and its allies or harmful to their cause. And number 6, I will never forget that I am an American, fighting for freedom, responsible for my actions, and dedicated to the principles which made my country free. I will trust in my God and in the United States of America. Folks, I had that on a laminated card at one point that I carried around with me at all times. In the pocket of my battle dress uniforms, otherwise known as BDUs. And reminded myself of it every day while I was in the service. I need to remind myself of it again. But that is tonight's On This Day in American History. Let's make sure that I don't lose that. All right. So, first things first, there was a video that I believe Redford? Oops. Let me put this over here. All right. So I believe that Redford 1283 or 1238 or something like that. But anyway, he had mentioned about this video, and yeah, I want to play it for you. It had to deal with Kamala Harris and a pen, just to pick it up from last night. I haven't seen him in the chat, but he was specifically talking to somebody else who had not seen this video. And so I just want to go ahead and bring that up right now. So let's go ahead and do that. And here is the video that he was referring to with regards to Kamala and her pen.
The power I have as a prosecutor is that with a swipe of my pen, I can charge someone with a misdemeanor, the lowest level offense possible. And by virtue of that swipe of my pen, you will have to go to a courthouse and stand in line. You will have to come out of pocket and hire an attorney. You may get arrested for a few hours. You will be embarrassed in your community. You will miss time from coming onto the Google campus. All because with the swipe of my pen, I've charged you with a crime, which I may choose to dismiss 2 weeks later. It's an incredible amount of power. And you want to make sure that the people who have this kind of power are taking seriously the responsibility in terms of understanding, as much as anything, the impact on the people who will be affected by that.
Absolutely.
You know.
So she ends that, by the way, with the whole thing about, you know, knowing who you have given that power to. And that actually is pretty poignant, considering the fact that we're about ready to vote in November with regards to someone like her. Yeah. She doesn't deserve that power. She does not need that power. Definitely not. She doesn't need it. I don't want to give it to her. I don't want to give her any power. She needs to get out of the political sphere. And speaking about her getting out of the political sphere, some more articles have surfaced with regards to people's review of her performance in that CNN interview. And yes, I am using quotes because that wasn't really an interview. That was more of a scripted show, let's say. for what's going on with it. So here in LifeZet, which is a new one for this, a new one for us to look at, but here is LifeZet. CNN interview backfires. Harris stumbles, Trump closes in. Well, apparently, the writer of this, who is, it's the LifeZet News staff that wrote this. Apparently, she has dropped, according to some of the, what do you call it? Some of the poll odds or the odds makers. And again, these are the betting odds makers. But apparently, two prominent bookmakers revealed that Harris's odds of winning have taken a noticeable dip after the interview. And that was reported by Newsweek, according to these guys. Yeah. So she didn't get much of a bump, if any, coming out of the DNC. She had this interview and it didn't really go very well. I'm not exactly sure what they are thinking in terms of where they're going to go with this. And I'm telling you that if everything goes the way that I anticipate it's going to go on September 10th, she is going to, she is going to probably fail. Anyway, they kind of go through a few of the odds. They talk about, the odds of winning and odds of losing. And she apparently was favored before the interview at 52.4%. But by Friday morning, her odds had dropped to 51.3, putting her in a tie with Donald Trump, according to the Star Sports Betting Company. And Trump's odds of winning improved from 48.8% up to 51.2%. So basically, we're within the margin of error both ways, with polling and with all kinds of stuff. We just have all kinds of issues here. So nothing, I mean, if she was a standout candidate, like what everybody on the left seems to think she is, she should be running away with this thing. She, if she was that much of a standout candidate, she would be, taking off and there would be no looking back. Not happening. So apparently there is something wrong with her here. And another thing that came out is, some, body language experts have taken a look at the footage of the CNN interview, and they pretty much confirmed what I told you last night, which is essentially that her body language suggested that Harris was uncomfortable, that she was hollow, and that she was insincere. Now, these are military interrogators, according to this Just the News piece, and body language experts found that during Vice President Kamala Harris's first interview since announcing her candidacy for president this summer, she was uncomfortable, hollow, and not confident in her answers. I mean, a lot of people don't seem to understand, but body language is actually upwards of 80 to 90% of all communication that occurs within the human species. And this is part of the reason why video is superior to just audio, and audio is superior to the written language. And it is also true that a lot of times things get lost in translation when you're dealing with things like the written word. This is part of the reason why we have all kinds of, descriptive language in terms of adjectives and, those kinds of words. I can't even think of anything further than adjective, but those types of words to essentially create the scene and the mood and the emotion that is involved here. When you have a lack of that in the face of, and in this particular case on video, her sitting there and, again, like I said, hunched shoulders, looking down, not paying attention, not, focusing on, Bash. I was told that's how it's pronounced. Dan Bash. But, you know, again, one of the things is that you need to understand that you have to look at the person's body language. What are they saying? Their facial expressions. You know, again, 80 to 90% of our communication is nonverbal. And it's all of these kinds of things that people are taking a look at. And even though you may not be all that perceptive with regards to what might be going on, believe me, your instinctual reactions are kicking in. And this just, again, she didn't come off very well in this whole thing. And things are starting to present themselves. Again, she is not a likable person. She really isn't. And why they decided to go with this idea, which I saw an article, I didn't put it in the show notes, but I saw an article where they don't want her talking about policy. They want her to run her campaign completely on joy and vibes. Well, this interview, this campaign ad, as Buddy called it out, is essentially nothing in terms of joy and nothing in terms of vibes, unless you are considering vibes of being uncomfortable, not confident, not sure of herself, those kinds of things. And so, you know, I don't think that this CNN interview went very well for her, and I'm betting that her campaign folks are trying to figure out how to get her out of the debate on September 10th, realistically, because they can't afford to put her in front of a camera, especially being unscripted and off a teleprompter, which I guess is what unscripted means. But anyway, so yeah, it's it didn't go very well. And, you know, it was confirmed by her body language. These are the experts who are saying it. And so, yeah. Anyway, they also, by the way, I didn't tell you this, but they also note in the piece that the Democrat presidential nominee goes into fight or flight when she gets uncomfortable and cackles, according to Greg Hartley, who is one of the people. He's a former former interrogator in the U.S. Army. So, yeah. Anyway, they didn't do a very good job. Now, if she had done, and here's the kind of the opposite effect on this, if she had actually done interviews and gotten rid of this one, the very first one, out of the way in front of everybody and their brother like 30 days ago, rather than waiting 38 to 40 days to present this part of her, I think most of us, at least many people, would have been over it by now. And she could have easily just, you know, chalked that off as, well, it was my first one, I was nervous, so on and so forth, and gotten more comfortable before she dropped down into this kind of a scenario. And yeah, it didn't work. It just didn't work. I think they flubbed up here. Not that I'm looking for them to actually win or do good things, but they definitely flubbed up here. So anyway, so one of the things that Kamala Harris has pledged, and I haven't really talked about this, but one of the things that she has pledged to do is to build, a pledge to build 3 million homes over her 4 years while she is president. Now, and this, of course, is her way of addressing what she considers the housing shortage that, of course, her administration is partially responsible for. You know, the whole thing with the inflation. But here in Woke Spy, they call her out for it because, you know, she talks about it where she actually wrote this on X, which is kind of interesting. My mother saved for years to buy a home. I was a teenager when that day finally came. I remembered how excited I was. Right now, home ownership is out of reach for too many Americans. When I am president, we will end the housing shortage by building 3 million homes and rentals. Well, there's only one problem with that. Mathematically speaking, they've already been building more in the United States, as the piece points out here. The United States is currently building 1.4 million homes a year, nearly double Harris's target of 750,000 per year. Yeah, she ain't the sharpest knife in the drawer, folks. She's not. She just is not. So, yeah. It's just, and that's actually even after, according to this, that's actually even after they start, their current home building figures have already been starting to drop off. So according to the U.S. Census Bureau, single-family new home starts, which comprised 66.8% of the total 2023 home starts, fell 6% from the year prior, which would have been, 944,500 units. Multifamily starts were down 14.4 from 2022 to 400,068,600. Looking ahead to the National Association of Home Builders forecast for 2024, total housing starts to decrease 3.4% to 1.37 million units, with single family starts rising 4.7, but multifamily starts decreasing 19.7 from 2023. So in other words, yeah, she just obviously has literally no idea what the hell she's talking about. She's acting as though she knows, and yeah, she doesn't. She doesn't know. Again. These are things that, those of us who have a functioning brain and will discuss and talk about on these kinds of programs, because of the fact that we actually understand that all she's doing is just trying to make people feels good. Because again, and yes, I said that the way that I did for a reason, but they are trying to spread joy. Yeah. I personally don't want a government that has to deal with joy. I want a government that is going to take care of things that are specific to the Constitution and stay the hell out of my way with everything else. Yeah. And as Picaric points out, she's already been vice president for three plus years. So why now? Why isn't she addressed this issue now? Which is exactly the attack line that anybody with any kind of intelligence would have, been asking. Well, you're already vice president. Why aren't you doing all of these things? You want to talk about all these things, all these wonderful policies. Why are you not doing them now? And especially knowing the fact that Joe Biden, Mr. Oatmeal Brains, is sitting on a beach in Rehoboth for an extended vacation. Because I think he's actually checked out. I'll be honest with you. I think he's done. I think he's like, you know what? You effers screwed me and I am finished. I am not doing a goddamn thing. Anyway. All right. Well, a couple new controversies, questionable stories, ethical questions have been added to the Democrat campaign. One of them is that apparently Kamala Harris at one point mentioned that she worked at a McDonald's. Now, the funny thing about it is some people actually grabbed onto that and they went back into archives of her speeches, her campaign messaging, and so on and so forth. She apparently never used it up until 2021. So now, I'm not saying that she's lying. I'm not saying it isn't true, because it very well could be. But also, too, they have an additional factor in the fact that apparently McDonald's Corporation has come out and said, yeah, we don't have any record of her working for us. So anyway, but before I get into the other fib that Walls has apparently been talking about, I want to tell you about my wonderful Low Goat Gear store. I'm wearing my shirt tonight. There it is. A Low Goat Gear t-shirt right here. You can get yours at store.americanperspective.online. That's store.americanperspective.online. I've got tank tops, t-shirts, crew neck sweatshirts, as well as hoodies. Fall is just around the corner. You got all of those coming up, as well as you might be able to grab onto a couple of different coffee mugs for yourself. If you like coffee in the morning, you might want to grab your American Perspective logoed coffee mug. Go to store.americanperspective.online and get yours today. I do appreciate everybody checking that out and seeing what I have available for you to do so. All right, back into Walls. So, of course, Kamala Harris is trying to use the McDonald's thing, I believe, is trying to use that in order to make herself look more personable. Okay? And, I mean, honestly, let's just face facts. The chances of us actually confirming this that's pretty far-fetched out there, because if the franchise itself, I mean, you got to remember, Kamala Harris is like 59, 58. I mean, if she says she worked there during her first year in college, and so that would have been a extremely long time ago, because it's not like she graduated college just the other day. So, again, I'm not really necessarily going to give credit to the story, but it does bring a interesting factor, I should say, into something like this, where you look at Walls. Now, according to this hot air piece, Walls himself may have told a not quite so factual account of how he got into politics. So, this might be, at least according to the hot air piece, this might actually be a little bit more serious than a little bit more serious of a case of political dishonesty than the case of they call it the missing Big Mac, but the McDonald's case. And maybe not by much, but still. Apparently, it's far enough off from the truth. And Tim Walz has told a story about the George Bush campaign provoking him into a career in electoral politics, but it's not quite passing the sniff test. So investigative reporter Gabe Kaminsky dug into a tale told by Walz that claimed, I got to get my banner off the screen. There we go. That claimed, that Walz had chosen a career in politics after getting denied entrance to a Bush campaign rally in Mankato, along with two students that he had brought with him for the, quote, educational experience. Supposedly, a carry sticker on one of the students' wallets prompted a staffer to keep them from entering the rally. Or that's the way the story goes. Now, Kaminsky has a different, the writer of the investigative reporter has a different explanation, according to his piece at the Washington Examiner, one that puts a different light on Coach Walz's claims. For one thing, Walz actually did get into the rally, so he wasn't denied. The teenagers that he brought with him apparently weren't his students. And those kids had provoked a confrontation with the campaign a few days earlier. So the two kids' last names are Clabber and Burkhart. And apparently they had a public confrontation with the Bush campaign days before the 2004 rally. The teenagers were heard making unfavorable comments about Bush as they were waiting in line and were initially denied tickets, according to an archived news report. Now, after the story was reported on the local news, and because Clabber had called the press, the Bush campaign contacted the teenagers and went ahead and offered them tickets. In the lead up to the 2004 election, there was heightened protest activity as police made arrests at campaign events. Clabber's parents knew Walz and asked him to chaperone the teenagers to the event, expecting that they may run into a problem. And they did, according to this. That day, as the trio waited in line, Bush campaign staffers told them the Secret Service had deemed Clabber and Burkhart a threat. Walz, in his retelling of the matter in 2006, said he was indignant. As a soldier, I told him I had a right to see my commander-in-chief, Walz had said at a 2006 campaign event. And the Bush campaign staffers apparently interrogated Walz and wanted to know if he supported Bush, according to Walz. But while the students were barred from the event, Walz was not, and walked right inside. So, yeah. Now, to be fair, the Secret Service making that decision, it was probably an overreaction, he points out in the piece. But it was their overreaction, not the campaign's. So, yeah, okay. So the facts are a little skewed here. Yeah. So, again, it just, yeah. The details are a little sketchy. So I mean, not that I'm looking to necessarily hit Walz for anything more, because, I mean, let's just face it. He's already digging his own grave, realistically, even after that debacle of an interview where he had the opportunity to come clean about his service and come clean about him saying and talking about his service, his quote unquote stolen valor for serving in war, and also some of the other things that he's been accused of, like retiring as a master sergeant rather than a command sergeant major, as he claims. And he chose grammar as his excuse. So obviously, and one other thing too that I didn't actually bring up, but there was another question of Kamala Harris with regards to Donald Trump claiming that she was not black. And Kamala Harris completely deflected it rather than correcting the record right then and there, which indicates that there is a potential, not saying it's 100% assured, although I've been telling you on this program, I showed you her dad's own words state that he is of Irish and undetermined origin. No black there. And her mother, his wife, was completely Asian Indian. So again, I'm just sitting here, saying that interview was a little bit revealing in some things, but nothing that anybody who was well informed didn't already know. So anyway, both Walz and Kamala Harris, those were to me, those were the two big questions of the evening, and they both deflected them. So, yeah, anyway. It's, again, now we're kind of getting down and we're just sort of starting to nitpick. I'll be honest with you with stuff like that, but hey, I would be remiss if I didn't report it. So, I showed you I played for you the audio of Nancy Pelosi in her escape from the Capitol building where she took responsibility for not having the National Guard on site on January 6th. Well, apparently, the Capitol Police Chief, Stephen Sund, has taken a little bit of an exception to Pelosi's attempt to deflect blame onto him for January 6th. This, in Blaze Media, former Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund denounces her National Guard claims, saying that Pelosi stymied his request for help. So, she said, I take full responsibility. And there's been a couple of videos that have surfaced with this entire kind of situation. Bam, say hello to Z as you leave. Make sure you say hi from me. But anyway, so she claims that she takes responsibility, but then she lashes out to the chief, Stephen Sund, putting the blame for January 6th on on his head. Pelosi claims that she wanted the National Guard to, quote, get rid of these people on January 6th. Although, according to Sund, her office rejected Sund's request for the Guard just 3 days earlier. Sund said that if Pelosi had simply granted his January 3rd request for the National Guard, quote, I don't think we would be here discussing this today. Now, there's a letter floating around in the social media sphere of Muriel Bowser also turning down the National Guard assistance, as well as turning down in the same breath assistance from other law enforcement agencies. Yeah. So, Sund told Blaze News that I am stunned by the repeated statements by Pelosi about there not being any National Guard deployed to the Capitol in advance of the attack on January 6th, when it was her Sergeant at Arms for the House of Representatives who denied my request for support on January 3rd, and then again repeatedly denied requests for 71 minutes while we were under attack on January 6th. Now, again, keep in mind, I'm telling you this because Congress, constitutionally speaking, Congress has complete control. They call it the legislature, but the legislature has complete control, 100% complete control of the 10 square mile area that has been laid out as DC. I've told you this on this program. This is part of the reason why President Trump could not deploy the National Guard. Even though he is the sole person responsible, there are things known as the Insurrection Act and the Posse Comitatus Act that prevent him from deploying troops on American soil. In order to satisfy those requirements within those two acts, certain things must fall into place. One of them, of course, being the fact that the local civilian authority has to ask for it. As you can see here, the local civilian authority in D.C. would have been the legislature, a.k.a. Nancy Pelosi and, at the time, Mitch McConnell, I believe. And yeah, that didn't fly. So anyway, she's refused to take responsibility, according to Loudermilk, Representative Barry Loudermilk, who is the chairman of the subcommittee on oversight. They actually had to obtain the videos that we're seeing that I showed you directly from HBO Inc. The January 6th committee, while they were supposed to hang on to that information and archive it, has refused to turn it over. So, yeah. Anyway, again, January 6th. I mean, I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but January 6th was not an insurrection. It was not put on by Donald Trump. Donald Trump had no responsibility for it, not even in terms of organizing it or anything like that, but he definitely didn't have any kind of responsibility in terms of supplying anybody with the National Guard, because he couldn't do it. He just could not do it. And also, too, for a lot of people who are saying, well, the National Guard should have been able to be available right then and there. You guys don't understand. If you are not staged and prepped and ready to go, it could take hours to get set up. So to get all your equipment issued and everything. I mean, if they were not sitting on standby for January 6th, which they weren't, they wouldn't have been able to just go. So, Tommy, I'm going to ask you, please clarify your statement saying that's not how it works with the Guard. What statement are you refuting something that I said? I'll just ask you to clarify that. So, anyway. All right. While I wait for that answer, I'm going to take a little drink to kind of see, because she's on a delay. They all are. Everybody's on a delay. So, so you were agreeing with me. Okay. So Tommy says, what you said about they're not ready on the spot, they're not. And it takes time to pull everyone in. Exactly. If they're not already staged and ready to go, I mean, even in the regular army, if you were not told ahead of time to be prepared and to be sitting and waiting for the orders to come down, it takes time. I mean, folks, you don't have your M16, in my case, the M4 now, but you don't have your M16. You don't keep it in the barracks. It's in the armory. Okay. The armory, you would have to line up and get issued that weapon, your weapon. Okay. You are assigned a specific serial number, but outside of that, it's kept in the armory. I mean, it takes time to spool these people up. This is part of the reason why the whole Tim Walz thing about saying, oh, we didn't get the order until, the 48 hours right before we left. Come on. They knew ahead of time. He knew ahead of time, especially being in the command, chain of command. He would have definitely known. So yeah, anyway. Yeah. So, there you go. All right. I've had it confirmed. Thank you. Thank you, Tommy, for confirming that. And yes, buddy, DC is not a state, and it shouldn't ever be one. There's a reason why it's not a state. There's a reason why it was taken from 3 different states. And all of that is outlined in the Constitution, damn it. Learn the Constitution and turn to understand why things were put that way. Anyway. Oh, and it looks like Tommy has even more experience than I do, because Tommy worked logistics and planning. So apparently I'm not that far off, people. So there you go. Accuracy wins again. All right. So to get to the title of tonight's show, let's go ahead and talk about this. Has anybody really felt like perfectionism and things like, oh, I don't know, a sense of urgency are racist? I mean, let's be honest here. There are certain things in my life that I definitely want whoever is on the other end, I want them to be a perfectionist. I want them to be a perfectionist. Oh, I don't know, things like, open heart surgery. Realistically, any kind of surgery. Okay. Any kind of surgery. I want them to be a perfectionist. That's what I want. You know, being shot into space where you have only one chance to get it right because, God forbid, if you're wrong and you skip off the atmosphere, never to be seen from again, you know what? I want that person who figures out that goddamn math to be a perfectionist. I'm just saying. Okay. And in fact, if you ever watched the movie Hidden Figures, which is supposed to be a fairly accurate, I won't say it's 100% accurate, but a fairly accurate representation of what happened with John Glenn being shot up into space, and giving credit where credit is due to the ladies who were of a black persuasion, certain ethnic persuasion, who helped to get him there. In particular, one particular interaction where she did the math in front of everybody. Okay. But I personally would prefer to have somebody with a little bit of perfectionism in their ideas, in their work, in certain cases, in certain situations within my life. I don't want somebody that isn't a perfectionist who basically says, you know what, open heart surgery. Yeah, well, that valve that we tried to repair, it almost made it. Almost isn't good enough. I'm sorry. Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. There's just no way. I can't even believe this, but here in Woke Spy, perfectionism and a sense of urgency are characteristics of white supremacy, according to NASA. Now, what I'm about to show you is some footage of NASA's diversity, equity, and inclusion training, and features some engineers that are claiming that they feel shame for being white and for taking part in what they consider white supremacy culture. Okay. Now, the video was shared by the conservative outlet Tenet Media, T-E-N-E-T Media. So hat tip to them for putting it out, and features two separate sections of the DEI training program. The first section that you're going to see is a engineer who is, and she's a white woman, she's explaining how she felt her actions to support minority groups didn't go far enough. That's the first part. And then the second part, and you got to listen to what this woman says, I'm telling you. But the second part is from the seminar, where they put up a slide that lists characteristics of white supremacy culture. Oh my Lord, people. Seriously. Take a listen to this.
And in doing this work of examining my own intentions and my own actions and their impact, I can see that there's so much more that I could have done to make the projects I've led equally welcoming to Black, Indigenous, and people of color as the white people they have engaged. I feel a lot of shame and regret about that. And I know that without looking head on at what I've done and not done, I won't be able to do better. So I'm looking forward to today's event and to this whole series as steps in my personal and professional journey to make my work more anti-racist and therefore more effective in reaching my aspiration.
And this may be a review for many of you, but these are those different characteristics that you probably see coming up a lot in our workspaces, especially in the practice of science. Perfectionism, a sense of urgency. I'm sure all of us are feeling a sense of urgency about some of the deadlines that we maybe have right now. The idea of power hoarding, the idea of...
Okay, she is going to go through a few of these, but I've got to read some of them, and I'll read them to you after she gets a little closer to the end of the video.
Of individualism over collectivism, quantity over quality, either or thinking. And so all of these things can really limit the way we go about doing our work, and they can really limit the way we are able to connect with communities that come from different cultural backgrounds that don't value these things the same way that white supremacy culture.
Okay. So here's some of the other ones for those on the audio portion of the program. Here's some of the other ones that are listed on this slide. Paternalism. Right to comfort. Progress is bigger or more. Now, keep in mind, these are all aspects that what they consider part of the white supremacy culture. Worship of the written word. Either or thinking. Oh my gosh. Objectivity. Oh, yes, that's racist. Oh my gosh, it's a white supremacy objectivity. Being looking at things from an objective viewpoint, that's racist. Ugh. Individualism. So if you're not part of collectivism, you're now racist? What? What the hell is wrong with these people? Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I just can't. I can't. Oh God. Perfectionism, which of course they listed. Fear of open conflict is another one. Being afraid of open conflict is now part of white supremacy culture. Some of us would call that being a coward or being afraid. I don't know. Anyway, I just, God, what a mess. And these are people, okay, so keep in mind, again, these are people who work at NASA. Hello, you launch human beings up into space where if you mess up or you make a mistake or, God forbid, you actually didn't anticipate or calculate things correctly, you will kill them. I can't. These people, they freaking drive me nuts. I'm telling you. I mean, again, as I pointed out, dude, I don't care what skin color you look like, but if you're going to freaking launch me off of like a 50,000 pound rocket into space where I could die if God forbid, here, just as an example, that Boeing freaking window that pulled off on that Alaska Airlines flight, just imagine if that happened. Just imagine if that happened on a freaking space capsule. I'm sorry, but I am going to say that accuracy, perfectionism, I want the best of the best. I don't care what their freaking skin color looks like. Same thing if I have to go in for like open heart surgery or any surgery whatsoever. They better be right. They better be good, because mistakes can cost people's lives in certain situations. That's just freaking ridiculous. Oh my God. I couldn't even. Oh, I'm sorry. I just can't. Anyway. All right. Let's move on. Uh-oh, looks like my glass is empty. I may have to fill that up a little bit before the end of the show. All right. Moving on to, well, before we move on, let me go ahead and take a quick break before we move on, and let me tell you about this fantastic thing that I also am a part of, known as True Grit Roots Network. TGRN.net is the web home of the True Grit Roots Network and the TGRN Blues channel. Head on over to TGRN.net, find yourself a player. You can play us right there in your browser. You don't even have to like download anything if you don't want to. But if you do, and you want to take us on the go, you can download our mobile app. Or if you already have the Live 365, the iHeartRadio, or the Audacity, that's AUDACY, the Audacity app, you can find us in their catalog of digital radio stations. Let me tell you about tomorrow. Tomorrow has got a fantastic show, and you can catch it at 2 separate times tomorrow. The first is at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. The second is 12 hours later at 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. And what it is my buddy, Jonathan Oogie Richards, and his Oogie's Sunday Groove. It is exclusively at TGRN and is hosted and produced by multi-award winning blues DJ Jonathan Oogie Richards. Oogie's Sunday Groove takes you from the front porch to the pew, featuring the roots of blues that came from the church and the field. Grab a cup of coffee Sunday mornings, or hey, enjoy a great spirit, something like bourbon, for the nighttime presentation, and join Oogie for a spiritual awakening through music. Again, it airs Sunday at 9 a.m. and then once again at 9 p.m. So there we go. I'm being challenged. Anyway, go and check us out at tgrn.net. True Grit Roots Network, based out of Austin, Texas, for that TGRN Blues. Apparently, I'm being challenged. Something about my hat. Somebody's hat is more awesome than mine? No way. There's no way. You're going to have to show me that hat, that's for sure. Take a picture of it, Outlaw, and send it to me. All right, let's get back on track for this. Okay, so you recall I talked about the problem in Aurora, Colorado, where you had some Venezuelan gangs that have taken over apartment buildings. Now there's two. There's not just one, but there's two that are being taken over. Well, according to Red State, the mayor of Aurora, Colorado, is now speaking out about the apartment building takeovers by these armed gangs. And also an Aurora City Council member apparently has also spoken out. So the Colorado mayor calls it failed policy, and the Aurora Council member, who's the name of Danny Jurinsky, Jurinsky, said they are patrolling these apartment complexes with guns. They go in, they beat up the staff, they hold guns to their head. We need our state and federal partners to step in. Yeah. So Mike Kaufman, who is the Aurora mayor, according to the Red State article writer, he's saying, or they are saying here, that Mike Kaufman is not part of the modern blue Colorado machine. He has been in Colorado politics as a Republican for many years. And while the writer was a GOP precinct captain in Aurora, Mike was the state representative. So in the interview linked above, Mayor Kaufman said that there are 3 buildings. Oh, now it's 3. 3 buildings involved, all owned by out-of-state landlords that have been taken over. He mentions ongoing investigations as to why there is a concentration of Venezuelans in these 3 buildings. He said, quote, somebody put them there, somebody funded them, and whether it be the federal government or someone else. So there are suggestions that these illegal aliens may have been installed in the buildings by the Biden-Harris administration. Yeah. Kaufman continued and stated, these gangs are attracted to where there is a concentration of Venezuelan migrants. Translate that to illegal aliens. So these gangs are preying on their own people. The mayor stated that this is an ongoing operation with local, state, and federal law enforcement, and that arrests have been made. Well, I got and by the way, Tren de Aragua gang leader, I think I discussed him in another one, but a gang leader known as Cookie Monster has been apprehended. Sorry. Yeah, I got an easy way to handle this. Either SWAT goes in with orders of, shoot to kill, or maybe you enact the Insurrection Act or something like that and take these people out. I mean, it just depends on how many, how much damage you actually want to do. So anyway, yeah, this is just a very bad situation. And by the way, if we had, as Coco Dominki points out on Rumble, Coco Dominki says, having a closed border would have prevented this problem. Actually, it's not just the closed border. It would have been, rather than the catch and release policy, if we'd have vetted these people as they came across, this probably wouldn't be a problem too. So, yeah. Anyway. What a mess. What a mess. And of course, this isn't, see, what a lot of people, and especially the Democrats, don't understand is that when you start with a small problem, okay, you start with a small problem and you fix the small problem before it becomes a bigger problem down the road. That's a lot easier and a lot less expensive than letting it fester and continue on and so on and so forth until it becomes a much bigger problem down the road. Now, not all situations will allow you to necessarily head those things off. I mean, sometimes you can get small problems that are unbeknownst to you. And yes, I did use unbeknownst in a sentence, but that are unbeknownst to you. And, you can't avoid some of those big ticket items. Unfortunately, this particular case, had the Biden administration just followed the existing immigration law from the beginning, which they refused to do. Had they followed it from the beginning, we wouldn't be having this problem. And if you think Aurora, Colorado is the only place that this is happening, I guarantee you it's not. I guarantee you it's not. It's happening elsewhere. It's happening in all kinds of major cities, and especially those cities that are Democrat run, Democrat controlled, and Democrat designated sanctuary cities. I guarantee you it's happening there. It's just not being publicized. When you add that to the loss of police presence because of things like defunding the police policies, you now have the recipe for disaster. That is the whole thing. Oh my gosh. Coco, I promise I will try and avoid the word unburdened, okay? Oh, 3 Chevy, you're a funny guy. Unbeknownst by what was before and unbeknownst by what will be. I can't even speak like her. Oh my gosh, it's just horrible. Anyway. All right. So something showed up in, sometimes you got to go to certain sources in order to gain a perspective on what is essentially an international issue, because the mainstream media is potentially not telling you the whole story. So I was looking around for articles in this and, for tonight's show. And I'll admit my typical sources were kind of coming up dry. I mean, it's stuff that I had already covered. I didn't want to cover it again, because I've got to make sure that you guys have a fresh and new perspective on things. I don't want to necessarily hash a bunch of old things over and over unless it's extremely important. Well, this particular article came up, and I'll admit it's a series of articles, or it's not a series of articles on this topic, but it's a series. I've got a series of articles here from this particular outlet because they seem to be a little more, shall we say, open to telling the truth about what is going on. And one of the things that I've been telling you about on this program for multiple days has been dealing with the idea that China is going to seize Taiwan. And China seizing Taiwan is going to cause some serious, serious implications, not only for the US, but for everybody in the world. Because as I've told you on this program before, Taiwan has a stock and barrel control of about 90% of all electronics. And we're not talking about just consumer grade electronics. We're even talking about military grade, government grade electronics. It has lock, stock, and barrel control of just about every single electronic device that is in the world today. Now, just think about that for a second. It is in the world, okay? The entire world is dependent upon this one place for electronic chips and chipsets. Now, this is part of the reason why the Biden administration has pushed to bring back manufacturing or chip manufacturing here in the US. The problem is, of course, that the Taiwanese company that is doing that chip manufacturing, especially in places like Phoenix, okay, is taking those chips and shipping them over to Taiwan to finish them off. So it's essentially not like we're really making the chips here, using the chips here. We haven't really solidified the supply chain to make sure that our chips, or that the chips that are made here in the United States, stay in the United States. It's not happening. Now, that's the part that the Biden-Harris-Biden administration is not, definitely not telling you, because they can't tell you that. If they do tell you that, it sort of blows their entire narrative out of the water. Well, this article, which I never really even thought about this, to be honest with you, because I was focused mostly on the Taiwan island directly. But this article kind of gives me a little bit of pause when it comes to international relations between China and Taiwan. And of course, the Epoch Times, being a outlet that focuses a lot on China's influence in the world scheme, this kind of does make sense. Here's the headline. China could seize Taiwan offshore islands within 6 months, according to a report. Now, that kind of move, of course, would test, without necessarily completely engaging, the entire offensive in relation to Taiwan, but this was going to test our resolve to respond effectively to such a crisis and have any kind of faith in its defense allies. Again, according to the report. So keep in mind, folks, when you're voting in November and you're thinking about all the domestic issues which focus on you and focus on domestic policies that are going to affect you and your daily lives, I encourage you to also look and think about potential international issues that could cause potential issues and problems. And yes, I've said issues a lot because it is an issue. To have Kamala Harris and Joe Biden at the helm, they brought on a lot of what you are seeing in the world today by being weak, by being stupid. Joe Biden by himself has been wrong on every single major foreign policy issue his entire 50 years plus, if it even is a plus, in his public service. He's been wrong on everything. He is a foreign policy moron. And if you honestly believe that Kamala Harris has any foreign policy chops, well, as I say, only morons vote Democrat. You're a moron too. Unlike Donald Trump, who has negotiated business deals throughout the entire globe from a business perspective. Granted, it's not necessarily a foreign policy from like a military perspective per se, outside of his 4 years in office, that he negotiated and almost secured a complete peace deal in the Middle East. Folks, there is no question at all. When it comes to foreign policy, there is only one person, one individual on both sides of the aisle and running for whether it's president or VP that has experience dealing with these individuals, including Xi Jinping, including the North Korean dictator, I can't think of, Kim Jong-un. In dealing with people in Mexico, there is only one individual who has that experience. And based off of the 4 years that he was in office, demonstrated that he had the ability to do the right things to get the right outcomes for the United States. And that is Donald Trump. There is no other question here. Now, I understand domestic policy is very important. I get it. It impacts all Americans here at home. It is, we shouldn't necessarily be looking at the foreign policy as being a make or break here. But when you add the domestic policies that kept us in the green for 4 years, still lower, by the way, inflation, even though the Biden-Harris administration keeps, and Harris even talked about it in her CNN thing, even though the Biden-Harris administration keeps talking about, oh, we've lowered inflation. Well, yeah, you've lowered it from a high of 9.1% after being in office for 18 months. But it's not only that we really need to pay attention to. We also have to be looking at the foreign policy prescriptions that are available for both of the campaigns. To sit here and talk about things like this, China could seize control of Taiwan's offshore Kinmen Islands within the next 6 months, believing that the United States would not take a forceful response to its aggression, according to a new report. Researchers from the Institute for the Study of War and the American Enterprise Institute, so this is both of them, warned that the Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping may believe that he has a unique opportunity over the coming months to carry out a short of war coercion campaign against the Kinmen Islands. Given the political landscape in both Taiwan and the United States. Folks, I'm telling you right now. I mean, just look at President Joe Biden right now. He's like vacationing in Rehoboth Beach. He's pretty much already checked out. Okay? He's pretty much already checked out. And you're telling me that that man who's been wrong on every single foreign policy to date is going to be able to handle a crisis that may come between now and our elections, or even worse, now and our inauguration of the next president? Yeah. I do not hold a lot of faith in this administration to be able to counteract this particular attack. Or any attacks, really. All right. So a couple real quick ones before we get to the question of the week, which is actually a pretty big doozy. I'll be honest with you. But great question. But anyway, So there was some new dust-ups about President Trump here recently in the idea that he apparently there's like some amendment to the Florida Constitution that's up in November. And so it's called Amendment 4 to the Florida Constitution. It has to deal with putting in an abortion, something to deal with abortion. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't really looked at this totally, but the amendment is to limit government interference with abortion, and it aims to overturn the state's 6-week abortion ban and, of course, bar future legislation limiting abortion access. So basically, what it would do is it would guarantee the right to abortion before what they consider viability, which is usually around 24 weeks of pregnancy, and could potentially allow it all the way up until birth. So, you know, the Democrats who keep talking about, oh, yeah, we're not trying to, get abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. We're not doing that. Yeah, they are. And this is just the perfect example of it right here. Okay. So apparently in an interview with NBC News on Thursday, Trump was asked how he's going to vote on the measure. And in true Trump fashion, he responded to the question, but he responded in such a way that allows the Democrats the illusion that he is not pro-life. And so, of course, the socials took off about this. I mean, everybody who is, they basically tried to turn the evangelical vote against Trump and so on and so forth. And so all Trump said, apparently, at least according to his national press secretary for the campaign, Carolyn Leavitt, said that he simply reiterated that he believes 6 weeks is too short. Now, just to put a little bit of clarification on this entire thing. The vast majority, 2/3 plus of Americans believe that abortion should be allowed up to somewhere in the realm of 12 to 15 weeks. Okay? And, the reasons are varied, but that seems to be where everybody just sort of shakes out in the grand scheme of things. If you're not completely 100% pro-life, and you're not completely 100% pro-abortion to like, oh my gosh, if I choose, 2 years down the road that I'm done with my kid, I can kill him right then and there with no repercussions. Now that's an exaggeration. Don't come and attack me on this, okay? But the point being is that all he said, he didn't actually state that he was not going to vote for it or against it at first. He has simply said that he just believes 6 weeks is too short for the abortion. And he later on clarified that no, he is not going to vote for Amendment 4 because in his mindset, Amendment 4 is too long. He would vote against the ballot measure. So this is speaking to Fox News yesterday. Trump shed more light on his position, saying that he would vote against the ballot measure because it's radical. And once again, Trump has never been a completely pro-life guy, like 100% pro-life. He has mentioned that he believes abortion does have its place. Most people who are not like sycophantically, and I'm using that term just because I can't think of another, completely 100% pro-life where abortion should be banned completely, most people are in agreement with this, that there are certain circumstances where abortion should be allowed in cases of rape, in cases of incest, in cases where the life of the mother or the baby is at risk. Yes, again, Trump has never hid from this. He has never, not said this. He has, Basically what they're doing is they're making a mountain out of a molehill once again. Okay? So just take it with a grain of salt. It's not that big of a deal. He's not going to vote necessarily for enshrining abortion in the Florida Constitution, and that's just it. Okay? That's just it. So anyway, that's all I have to say really about that whole issue. All right. Let's go ahead and get on to the question of the week. And tonight's question of the week comes to us from 3 Chevy over on Rumble. 3 Chevy says and writes in, he says, "Hey, Rick, my question for you is, thinking of how bad our debt situation is and how many millions of illegal immigrants have been allowed to cross our borders. If President Trump gets reelected, could he declare a national emergency to deal with these situations in the same way as he did with the China virus in his first administration? Along those same lines, what are the requirements for a president to declare a state of emergency, and can Congress override such a declaration?" There was a scenario put forward that had Biden leaving office early, and he claims voluntarily or otherwise, okay, and the vice resident, he means Kamala Harris, taking over and finding an excuse to cancel the election, perhaps by declaring some emergency. Assuming the Senate would vote on party lines in support of this, is there any chance they could get away with something like this? And he ends with, "Thank you again for all the work that you do on this broadcast every week. Sincerely, 3 Chevy." All right. So let's take this and break this down one by one. All right. So first of all, constitutionally speaking, okay, there is nothing in the Constitution that states clearly 100% that you can suspend the Constitution. There's nothing there. Okay. Therefore, the idea of a declaration of an emergency is essentially, by definition, unconstitutional. The problem is that the Constitution and constitutionality has to be challenged in the courts in order for the courts to be able to do something. This is part of the reason why you have things like the student loan payments being suspended and stuff and forgiven. Nobody's challenged them in the Supreme Court until, some of the states get together and challenge it. So the fact of the matter is that if the president at the time, whoever it is, declares a state of emergency, okay, then what you would end up with is somebody having to take that to court and say, hey, there's no state of emergency, and try to usurp that and challenge it under constitutional basis in order for it to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. Now, keep in mind, you can appeal directly to the Supreme Court. You don't necessarily have to go through the state and the federal and all of that stuff. You can go directly to the Supreme Court, which I would hazard a guess may happen in a case where there actually isn't a state of emergency and that somebody tries to, in fact, fake one in order to take control. Okay? But all of that being said, there actually is a statute that was put in place by Congress that allows for the declaration of a national emergency. Okay? Now, there's a specific line that I want to point out to you in this particular case. So this is 50 U.S. Code 1621, Section 1621. You can go and take a look at it. You can look it up, okay? Here is the specific line that I want you to understand what it's about. So here, under subsection A, with respect to acts of Congress authorizing the exercise during the period of a national emergency of any special or extraordinary power. So here we go. Basically, it says that with respects to acts of Congress authorizing the exercise, meaning that the president can't just declare a state of emergency for no reason. Acts of Congress have to be put in place, supposedly, in order for this to happen. So essentially what goes on with declaring a state of emergency is the Congress essentially has written into statutes that if a state of emergency is declared, that the president will gain an enormous amount of power. Okay. The question really will become with whether or not Congress would actually authorize something like this during the exercise. And the thing about it is that the authorization of the exercise, because think about this, the purpose of declaring a state of emergency is to usurp the slow-moving machinations of the legislature in order to get things like, for an example, FEMA involved in natural occurrences such as hurricanes or tornadoes or any of that stuff. There is a purpose and a reason for doing these states of emergency, but I'm not exactly sure. I mean, again, keep in mind the Democrats have been challenging the Constitution for pretty much the last 4 years, so who the hell knows? They could just declare a state of emergency, kick off the Insurrection Act, and next thing you know, we're all being, martial law is declared, and we're all thrown in the gulag. I mean, anything is completely possible when you're dealing with with people who completely ignore the law. But the way that it should work is that the president would send a message off to Congress and say, hey, I'm declaring a state of emergency. Do you guys allow me to do that? And they should transmit back, yes, this is a problem and you should go. You should have these plenary powers. Now, the thing about it is, and wow, let me just tell you, there's 150 statutory powers that are listed that are allowed to become available to the president upon declaration of a national emergency. Now, this from the Brennan Center of Justice, and I'm not going to go through all 150, but let me just tell you, in 2019, President Trump declared a national emergency to secure funding. So he already used it to secure funding that Congress had expressly denied for the construction of the wall along the southern border. Now, before that declaration, most Americans were unaware of the vast set of laws that gives the president greatly enhanced powers during emergency. So it's already been used once. Recent history too. So, and there's more than, there's just so much. This is such a complex issue. I can't just give like a 5-minute dissertation or actually 10-minute dissertation on the whole thing, but I would encourage you to check it out. Honestly, I really, really think, and again, this is, me thinking that we actually have people with ethics, morals, and standards, that I really don't think it's going to happen. However, anything is possible. Anything is possible. And by the time you catch up to it through the judicial system, I think we would have a bit of a problem on our hands. Now, that being said, keep in mind, the American people, I don't think, would be all that pleased if somebody like Kamala Harris just declared a state of emergency just to shut down the voting process. And keep in mind, back when the Spanish flu was running around here, we did have an election. So it's, the whole idea of canceling an election for a national emergency, I think, is pretty bold. Pretty bold. For that to come out. But anyway, hopefully that kind of answered your question. I know I didn't give, it's such a complex issue. I mean, I could probably do an entire episode on the damn thing if I really fully delved in and researched and told you everything, every little single angle that could possibly be put out there. So anyway. All right, folks, that is it for me for tonight. Do me a favor. Hey, and by the way, Monday is Labor Day. I am planning on a show anyway. So come back here Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time. If you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com. That is my favorite streaming platform. Head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is completely free. And once you sign up, click that follow button. Well, search up the American Perspective channel and then click that green follow button for following the show and get notified every time I go live. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm planning on going to see Reagan, the movie, tomorrow, provided everything works out. So I will probably have a review for you on Monday, hopefully, if everything works. So we will see you on Monday. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next time on the American Perspective channel. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.